Hello, everyone. So today we're back on YouTube with William Palandre. William runs an ad agency called Convertex. We had talked a bit and thought, damn, it's funny. We're both at kind of similar sizes. We have small agencies that are running and doing acquisition. He, for his part, does ADS with a good majority of C, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll be able to talk, of course, about the synergies between SEO and CA to see a bit the versatility, the things that are interesting. I had quite a few questions to ask him because I often hear about CA from my clients, but rarely from agencies. So I thought it would be interesting to be able to ask him all my questions. Are you doing well today, William? Are you ready?
Listen, I'm doing great. The weather is fantastic today. Everything's good. Business is coming in. No, really, everything's good. There have been times when things weren't as good, but right now everything's fine.
Perfect. That's great to hear. Me too. I always smile when business is coming in, and that's the case right now. So there you go. We're always in a good position. It's nice.
You really have to manage to separate your well-being from it, actually. The company, for example, in December 2025, you didn't have any renewals. People were waiting until January to make a decision. It was hell. So same thing in December. I wouldn't necessarily have told you, yeah, things are great. We're doing awesome. No, honestly, at the start of the year, it's super cool. There are projects coming in. So no, it's cool. It's not all the
time. So good. So interesting. You were just telling me earlier that most of your clients are generally physical businesses. You're generating leads for services or things like that. Is that the majority of what you do?
Actually, at Convertix, let's say about 30% is e-commerce. So e-commerce, I don't need to tell you how that works. What's interesting is maybe the other 70%, which is more about services. These are classic businesses. It could be plumbers. It could be startups. It could be any type of company that offers services. There could be some of that. Software publishers, software publishing companies, really all kinds. I contrast this more with information businesses. We recently shot some videos with Louis Esquia, whom you might know, a mainstream YouTuber, but who also has a business side. And he really showed that there's a whole other world in ADS, which corresponds to the world of info products. When I was telling you that we do classic business services, there are also innovative companies. I'm thinking of our clients, Legal Renov, who make it super easy to get a building permit. That has nothing to do with the world of info products. Info products are a completely different world with absolutely massive profit margins. And it's a totally different way of creating a product, actually. So for us, I'd say we support the classic entrepreneur, the regular entrepreneur, the entrepreneur, version 2000s, let's say, or even 90s.
I see. Okay, that's pretty funny. My split is similar, generally 30% e-commerce, 30% SaaS, and 30% product generation. It ends up looking quite similar, which is funny. The first question I want to ask you is, since I often hear my clients talking about CA, I have zero expertise in CA. I'm totally clueless when it comes to C. And there are always some synergies that exist. So can you tell me from your side, what are the best synergies you find between SEO and CA? In what cases do you find it really relevant, to do CA where there are good synergies, situations where 1 + 1 = 3 and not just 1 + 1 = 2, for once when there's both SEO and CA? From your perspective, what kind of synergies do you see in that regard?
Well, first of all, I'm going to start by not answering the question. Instead, I'm going to talk about when you shouldn't advertise. The advantage of SEO is that it can be a clever and thrifty technique. Now, you might not agree with me. We can't say that SEO is free because there is a time investment involved. And the time investment is the time you're not spending on something else. So it does cost time, but sometimes SEO is much more accessible when you're just starting out. Whereas with ads, I'm thinking of Google Ads in particular. But honestly, sometimes it can be super expensive. It costs money, and if you're just starting out, it might not be the best option. And even if you're already up and running, it can quickly become very costly. Actually, I'll use my agency as an example. The keyword Agence Bouygues, that search query. Agence Bouygues de Lyon costs 13 euros per click, between clicks from competitors, clicks from potential clients, and other clicks from people who can't make up their minds. And between clicks from people doing benchmarks, it can quickly get really expensive. If you don't have money, you don't advertise. So you can do minimum viable advertising, maybe, but if you can't afford it, don't advertise. And the second point is, depending on your business, it might not be relevant. If you're a naturopath in Lyon, normally when you get a patient, the expected revenue is maybe 70 euros, something like that. The level of repeat business, maybe 1 out of 10 people will buy the famous pack of 10 sessions. but actually the expected revenue per person is way too low. Paying for clicks or visibility to get a new client that costs 30 euros is extremely expensive. In fact, you can't think like a traditional business. So it really depends on your line of work. For people with businesses that have very low margins, it's not even worth it. Don't advertise, it's overkill. It might be better to focus on building a solid SEO strategy, especially with the tools we have today. A robust SEO strategy, especially with the tools available to us now. Now, when it comes to synergies, what's interesting is that there's a real complementarity. I'll take the example of a landscaper. We supported a landscaper in Lyon. At the very beginning, when I was more focused on SEO, the goal was to get him to rank first for the keyword landscaper, Lyon. We managed to do it. But one day, we also got deranked. I can't explain why. We were first for landscaper Lyon. We were getting all the business. And overnight, we dropped to 5th place. The first result wasn't following any best practices. It was incomprehensible. It was really frustrating. So the first synergy is actually this. The business I don't get through SEO, maybe I can get it through C. So already, I was adding a new opportunity to bring in business. Then I secure my position. Because how can I put it? I'm first in SEO, but who says I'll still be first tomorrow? And if I'm first in both SEO and SEA, actually, I get twice as much business. There are people who will never click on certain results. SEO, because those are good clients who click on that section, C, and vice versa. Personally, I often tend to think that people who pay for ads are paying for their visibility. Organic results tend to be better, more in line with what I'm looking for. Maybe that's a preconceived notion, but that's how I see it. I even think I read somewhere that there was a correlation between clicking on paid and free ads, depending on the level of education, for example. So depending on your type, it can be more or less relevant. The more educated people are, the more likely they are to scroll down to the results. SEO. I can't cite the source, but I think I saw this study somewhere. I don't know if you had it.
The source will be, we believe you, we believe you. It's an unimpeachable source. That's fine.
That works perfectly for me. So that's the first point, complementarity. The second point is to create a complete funnel. Actually, depending on what I'm going to sell, I might want to reach people through SEO with informational content. Imagine I'm dealing with complex sales. I've already bought all the commercial and intent-driven queries through CA. Results. Well, the next step is that I'll use SEO and I'll work on ranking for my topic. From an authority standpoint, for example, Leo, you're going to explain what that is. Trust flow, citation flow in SEO articles that have been really well thought out. People will come to your site, people will consume the abstract content, and then you'll be able to retarget them. So at that point, it won't be SEO anymore. It'll be more about ad meta, although we could do it on YouTube. Why not? But you're going to bring them into a funnel. I really see the synergy by telling myself, actually, with SEO, I'm going to target all the little spots that are interesting. And then I'm going to rework that audience with the advertising side. There are synergies that will be less relevant, for example, with SEO content. People come in through SEO. I find it not very relevant to try to get them back again through SEA. It's just more search, except maybe bringing people in through branding. Well, why not? No, what's really interesting is SEO. I go for SEO. I cast a really wide net. I have a blog that talks about how to do growth hacking on Instagram. I sell resources. People come to my site. And then with the advertising part, I'm going to retarget them. And at that point, I'll try to reach out to them to sell them something or move them further down the funnel. I find that the COC synergy is much less present. It's more about complementarity. But we're going to rework these audiences with traditional ad networks in display mode. So I think that's really what we should focus on, honestly.
Okay, that's great, because that's exactly what I was thinking too. The new channel, I'm 100% on board. And it's interesting because, in fact, they're not the same audiences. You're targeting a different kind of business. Even if it's the same Google top 10, in the end, it's not the same people clicking on both. So you can combine the two, so to speak. Then from there, you have the retargeting part on the informational side, where we know we don't convert through SEO. And after that, you can retarget with paid ads because there was an initial interest shown. So that's excellent too, I think. And then maybe with Google's ad network on YouTube, ADS or DualSense for retargeting on display or things like that, maybe, right?
Yes. So regarding the display part, I have to admit that in my teams, I hired people who came from big agencies where they did display what they call programmatic. Just today and last week, I had lunch with an agency head who explained to me that they do display for large public entities, but it's often just money thrown out the window. The first thing you do when you run display ads, we don't have the information because we don't know where to look. But when you know where to look, you realize that most display ads end up on apps. For example, I was on Duolingo this morning before we called each other. Duolingo constantly sends you advertising apps. Of course, that's their business model when you're on these apps. On 2048, for example, from time to time, you get a pop-up ad. You click on it. It's annoying because it takes you out of your app. I really just took 2048 as an example, the oldest app in the world. And actually you end up clicking. It's just advertising. You don't care. You weren't there for that. Personally, I'm really not a fan of display ads. It can possibly be relevant in certain contexts, but the ROI aspect is just not strong enough. So for brand awareness, maybe, but that's about it. YouTube, on the other hand, I really believe in it because I can totally imagine a format where, for example, you, Leo, you retarget everyone who visited your site, and then you can really play it up a bit. Be provocative and say, hey, Leo, buddy, you came to my site, but you didn't take action. You didn't fill out the form. Come on, let's do an audit. Let's have a strategy call. So in that case, there are really great things you can do. That's for your business, but it could be, for example, well, for a plumber, it's not relevant because it doesn't match the intent at all. If you need a plumber, you need one right away. That too, it's for doing a bathroom remodel. And in that case, the value proposition is you come to my website, create the bathroom of your dreams, and we'll support you and give you a 3D projection. There are plenty of things we can do. So these are things that are possible. I'm thinking of something else because I know you'll really like these topics. A little bit tricky things in SEO, the little techniques. We can even imagine that thanks to SEA, thanks to advertising, we can build brand awareness, get our brand known, and increase the number of people searching for us on Google. And so we know very well that when someone types your brand name, there's a very high probability they'll click on your brand name. You just have to look at Search Console to see the click-through rate. You could say in a way that doing advertising helps boost your SEO a bit indirectly because it increases it. Your CTR. Now, it all depends on whether people believe or not that CTR on the SERPs affects SEO, but I'll let you have an opinion on that because honestly, I don't know. I've heard yes, I've heard no. You'll tell me about it, maybe later. But in that sense, it does allow for CTR manipulation. At the end of the day, as I told you, SEO has advertising is really expensive. Paying a lot just to manipulate CTR isn't necessarily money well spent, I think. So it's another way to use ADS for SEO.
Okay. That's really interesting. I also think you have a really strong synergy with Meta when it comes to building brands, especially in branded searches and things like that. Meta is really interesting. Whereas I think with Google Ads, you're not really building a brand. The reality is that you have searches that are intent driven. You feel like it's going to convert. You feel like it's not memorable, unfortunately, with Google Ads. But on the other hand, you do convert. You get performance, you convert. The search is intent driven. And you have an ROI that is calculable and more predictable more easily than with Meta, where the volatility, let's say, is a bit higher. But I think we've created a strong synergy. And I think that here and there, SEA, unfortunately, isn't what will help build a brand. But it can be used to bombard and generate revenue.
Yes. Actually, you have to demand this aspect from CA, profitability. We're in 2026, and it's getting more and more expensive. Every year, CPCs go up for me. There you go, it's getting more and more expensive. Advertising, either way, you must make it profitable. Soon it won't work because AI will be everywhere. So you really have to maximize the machine's profit. So actually, you shouldn't think to yourself, I buy keywords, that's over. Agencies from the 2010s that tell you, we buy keywords. No, you need to go by profitability. You need to buy customers because it's actually too expensive. So you need to have tracking that's spot on. And here you have the entire Convertix channel filled with tutorials to set up great tracking. Of course, you can also book an appointment with the Convertix team. Work on your landing pages, have amazing landing pages. Amazing, you already had great templates. Now you have Cloud Code, you have Lovable, you have no more excuses not to get started, right? And at worst, you can find a service provider to help you out. You really need to optimize the entire funnel from A to Z. You especially need to optimize it, but also avoid wasting your money. Don't do display advertising. Stop buying keywords. I don't know, like Google Ads. If you're a Google Ads agency, don't buy the keyword Google Ads. Buy Google Ads agency, buy Google Ads consultant, buy business-related keywords. And you can't afford to. Just recently, we signed a client in Lyon. It was a school specializing in AI. And actually, they just put 90 euros a day on Google Ads. They started the machine and just let it run. But in reality, when we took over, it was a disaster. But that's because, in fact, they didn't know. They were already spending 70% of their budget on their brand name, even though no one else was bidding on it. Then the rest was on informational queries. And maybe 5 or 10% of the budget was going to keywords like AI training. It's a complete waste. And then when you do it, you have to push, you have to put in some intensity. If at some point it's not profitable, you just have to stop. Maybe Google Ads just isn't profitable for your vertical because you're not attractive enough, because it costs too much, because your profitability model just isn't there at all. Leo, if you start doing Google Ads tomorrow, I don't even know if you do it now. But for Astracy, maybe for keywords like Google Ads agency, SEO agency, Lion, it might end up costing you way too much compared to what it brings in. On the other hand, maybe there's a little gap between the two that you could take advantage of. Geo agency, IEO agency. We say IEO, right?
Some people say Geo, some say IEO. Honestly, everyone has their own version for that.
Right now, I'm responding to a public tender where typically they go, so it's a nightmare, all of that. But still, there might be little windows, places to fit in. But yeah, it's expensive. And actually, for us, typically contacts, Animal, Chaussee, Convertix, we stop. We decided yesterday to stop Goodyear because, in fact, we're not making any money. We're not making any money. We gain visibility, but it's not ROI driven enough. Actually, I think it's 90% of our competitors who are clicking on it. But sometimes you have to test to see. On the other hand, there's no point in testing if on paper we know it won't be profitable.
I pretty much agree with you. You started to touch on an interesting topic, which is the AI part that I'd like to come back to. There's GPT. They've started to announce that they'll be running ads. They haven't started running them yet, I think. There's also the fact that Google hasn't lost any search volume, yet you really see it. But you can feel there's still a general trend where the market is shifting towards AI for the informational side of things. So obviously that's going to burn through some budget. It's going to eat into Google's volumes, theoretically, in the long run. And there will be an extremely high intent aspect potentially on the ChatGPT side, which is already showing for us on the Geo side conversion rates that are impressive. What do you think about that? I imagine you're following this closely, but what's your take on it a bit on that topic? Do you think it's going to happen? How do you think it's going to play out?
Actually, I'm not following it that closely in the sense that I know there's a change management process involved. When something new comes along, you have the early adopters, but business rarely happens with the early adopters. The people who are a bit nerdy about all this, there are some who will do it themselves. So for me, I have a business-oriented perspective. Business. The people I'm going to support will be the 2027 to 2028 wave on these topics. That said, there are still opportunities to seize right now. Typically, it's true that as an advertising agency, tomorrow, as soon as this arrives in France, if we can be among the first 10 agencies to do it, it's easier to grow in a market that's expanding. That's what you were saying about the topic. SEO, in the interview with Romain, it's easier to grow with a market than to come and fight in a red ocean. Typically, it will be a real opportunity, but only from a business perspective. Technically, today, the announcement was made a few months ago, I think maybe in November or December. It was supposed to be in the United States. It's still in the United States, apparently. For now, it hasn't arrived in France yet. There's no official date. We'll probably go for it because at some point we want to be part of it. We want to be part of it. And there's an opportunity to seize. The issue with advertising on AIs is that it's quite criticized for now, but at the same time, people are always criticizing something. So there's always a reason to complain. It's because, in fact, it could disrupt the quality of AI responses. I have no idea. We'll see. But in any case, what is certain is that from a business perspective, there will be great opportunities to pursue. You can see him working on his Olympic Games. How many times this week, like for example, I went to eat at a Lebanese restaurant on Sunday night. It was ChatGPT that found it for me. I said, I want to have Lebanese food, but I don't want fast food. And it found me a great Lebanese place in the 2nd district in Lyon. And we had a great time and we left reviews for him and we boosted his credibility. Joe? And that's so cool. And it's because the guy asked us nicely at the end, you had a good time. Leave a review. If he hadn't asked us, we might not have done it. He asked us. There were 4 of us. He looked at each of us and we all did it actually. He got 4 reviews from us and that's it. Just common sense. So there you go. Actually, you just have to go for it. And the thing is, if you're passionate about ads, you'll absolutely want to jump in right away, but you have to give it time. People aren't all using AI yet to do their searches. Even for you, on the SEO side, SEO isn't dead, not at all. Because honestly, it takes a while for people to get into it. It really does take time. It takes time. Let me remind you, there are still companies doing their accounting on paper with spare parts. So don't worry about that. It's like saying cloud code will destroy HubSpot and Salesforce. Well, yeah, it will destroy them, but over the course of a few years,
we have time to see it coming. It's fine. Don't worry. Yes.
My mother, for example, she works in an administrative field in France. She just got trained on the software that was implemented in 2015 and has been in use since 2018. And now it's 2026. Actually, there's an inertia in the system. Well, people have their opinions about it. But don't worry about that. You're ahead of the curve. Unless you're working with Flash, you're ahead of the curve.
That's the only case, I agree. It's true that there are still plenty of companies that exist. It's funny because there was the digital transformation of companies. That was the wave of 2012. Like, okay, here we go. We're starting the digital transformation of companies. And it's still something that's happening right now, actually. There's still a huge market for digital transformation in companies because there are so many old businesses, old factories that are still very far from digital. And here we are on YouTube talking about digital acquisition. So obviously we're riding the wave, but you're right. The bulk of the market isn't with us, actually. The bulk of the market is currently being digitized, something that should have been started 20 years ago, which is only just happening now.
To give you an example, in my field, I think it's even less than in SEO. All the companies like Solocal. I don't know if you...
That's what I mean. Oh, yes, Solocal. They're not from our world either.
Yes, actually, I focus on ads, but it's true that in SEO, there's quite a lot of impact. So I'm very critical. I have pretty clear opinions about this type of company. Let's just say I'm really impressed by their sales machine because honestly, closing that many people, building something that big, that's something. But what a scam. Damn, what a scam. What a scam. Oh, yeah, what a scam.
I think it's one of the biggest digital companies in France. It's one of the biggest companies selling digital services in France. It's also the biggest digital company scam in France, I think. Anyway, what I've heard is contracts for 7 years, nonsense like that, you know?
Oh, yes, 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah, 7-year contracts. I thought, oh, wow, that's really something else, guys.
Yeah, because for me, even when I said 4 years, people were already freaking out. So 7 years, I had already mentioned it. And actually, when you search for Solocal, I'll do the test live. I think that among the top search results, you get that famous Facebook group from the community, people who are fighting against Solocal. That is, there you go. It's in 5th place. In 5th place, it's Addis Solocal. It's a group where people do nothing but criticize Solocal and share template lawyer letters to leave the service. Just look at these 5th place results. And you even have people prospecting, telling others to leave Solocal and come to their company instead. It's really a nightmare. And so what you can blame the company for is not delivering what they promise, because actually they have contracts. They promised you a website. You got a website, yes, but it's the same cookie cutter template as the others. On the other hand, they run ads for you, offering to do advertising for 120 euros a month. Part of that goes to them, part to Google. Nothing is actually managed. It's pretty much a nightmare. However, they do allow some people, let's not forget, their contribution is also to help craftsmen who would never have had a website otherwise. And I have some in mind.
He has a website now and does a little bit of advertising. He has a small setup. It gets his foot in the door. Even if it's done very poorly, even if the contracts are kind of terrible, at least it opens up the market a bit to certain people who would never have done it simply because they have an army of salespeople who do it for them.
I would love to be recruited. I'd love to hire a salesperson from Solocal. They're excellent. They're so focused on cold calling. No matter how many times I tell them I'm an agency, they keep prospecting me. And actually, my commercial admiration comes from the fact that they never give up. So they do a lot of churning. They churn through young salespeople fresh out of school who are hungry for success. The sales floor, I really admire them on the sales side. But when it comes to ethics, not so much with these digital guys. It's a shady kind of relationship. But in the meantime, they're still working. They're working less and less well, I've noticed. But
yeah, unfortunately, they're really declining now. Listen, they're still one of those interesting companies. It's true, we often talk about the big players who are like us, but we're really talking about them now. Big players who are giants of that size and who really have a completely different approach. It's interesting. There's a question I wanted to ask you. These are strategies I've heard about. Personally, I come from a pirate background, so of course I've heard a lot about pirate strategies. For DATs, for half of my clients, these are things that aren't allowed because the topics are sensitive. I'm thinking of CVD, for example, where you're not allowed to do DATs, etc. One of the strategies I've seen recently, which works well, is bidding on your competitors' brands. I believe it's something that's allowed on Google Ads up until the point where your competitor asks you to stop. Roughly speaking, that's how it works. Is that the kind of strategy you're familiar with? Can you tell us more about it?
Once again, you have to think business. Legally speaking, what you're not allowed to do is run misleading or false advertising or pretend to be a competitor. That means specifically putting your competitor's name in your ad that you're not allowed to do. On the other hand, you're completely allowed to buy their name as much as you want. I don't know, say you're Solocal and you want to appear on the site meilleurreferencements.fr, you can absolutely do that. What's a bit tricky is that when you use Google's automations, actually they'll put in what's called a keyword tag, which will replace your ad title with the keyword that was typed in. If you have an ad targeting competitors and you use a keyword tag, there's a risk that without intending to, you end up putting your competitor's name in your ads, and that's not allowed. That's considered false advertising and misrepresentation.
I have a story about that. When I was working at Cdiscount got hit with a major lawsuit because of a mistake. It was about product brands and so on. It wasn't intentional, but hey, listen, you've got a complex machine that you don't fully control, and sometimes unexpected things happen. You got sued.
Just like that, that's why, and it's part of the pirate mentality. Actually, I want to say, at some point, if you're too afraid, you'll never do anything. So at some point, just go for it, and at worst, your competitor will send you a letter or a lawyer's letter. They're not going to do much. Lawsuits are too expensive unless you're a C10 account, but that's something to keep in mind. Next, does it work? Actually, it depends on your business. For example, if you're in aviation, if you're French in an aviation context, say you're selling plane tickets, there's no one less loyal than me. When it comes to, I just go for the cheapest, really. At the end of the day, I pick the cheapest one, the best value for money. Of course, you don't have to pedal to get the plane going, no, but I know that I'm not very loyal to my bank or to anyone at that level. On the other hand, for example, I'm extremely loyal to OVH for hosting services. Why not? Actually, the question you need to ask is about the people who are going to search. If someone types in the competitor's name and you show up, if they're searching for the competitor's name, maybe they had an intention toward the competitor. Maybe they wanted to go to their website. So does showing up give you some brand awareness? Why not? But how much is it going to cost you? If you pay 1 cent per click, it's not the same as if you pay €1. Sometimes people will click on your site thinking it was the competitor's site. So you're paying for someone to come to your site, consider you, and maybe leave again. Well, yes, you've captured them, and now they're in your retargeting funnel. Why not? In the end, what is the expected outcome? In business, is your challenge about brand awareness, being known in the market, or is your challenge about business conversion? I had an example in mind. I was supporting a subsidiary of West France that produces podcasts. It's called Sauti. We thought, hey, actually, when someone is searching for a competitor's agency, they're basically in a buying mindset looking for a provider to produce their podcasts. Maybe it could be smart to buy the competitors' names. Because in fact, when they come to our site, at least they consider us as one of their options. And if we're a bit clever and manage to retarget them, it can really make sense. People are actively looking for a provider, so why not? So it's always something to put into perspective with your business. I would say the more you have high hopes for revenue behind it, the more you can afford strategies like this, and vice versa. Actually, if it's just to call a plumber, buying the name of the neighboring plumber, well, yeah, just to fix a leak. What? I mean, the person isn't there to get 20,000 quotes. The more complex the purchase decision is, the more worthwhile it is to do it. Because in fact, people will compare, and appearing to be considered, why not? In 80 to 90% of situations, I would say it's not relevant. Okay. When ads aren't working and you're hoping that this will make your ads work, it's probably not going to work. Because actually, it's just a booster. Unfortunately, if you want hacker techniques, it's better to go into SEO than the ads side. Ads actually, that's the problem. It's that we try to find tips and tricks. At some point, it's just common sense. Ads are really a matter of common sense. And actually, it's just that there are a lot of agencies that put a junior in charge who will schedule meetings with Google advisors to manage your ads in traditional agencies. And as a result, they don't have very good command of it. But once the foundation is solid, you have to be able to maintain it. There aren't 20,000 tips and tricks. You can work on conversion. Sometimes there are a lot of clients who we tell them, but you're just too expensive, or what you're offering just isn't appealing enough. There's a bit of conversion.
The marketing isn't good enough. It's pretty funny because when it comes to ads, there's really a challenge, isn't there? I feel like more than just doing acquisition, it's about providing business consulting. For us in SEO, we often say we're a business partner, etc. The reality is that's true. We do everything we can to drive conversions. but our primary role is to bring in traffic. You know that if you don't bring conversions, your service no longer makes sense. So you'll be out. So you need the guy to convert. And you might potentially need to take action, or at least advise on the marketing side, on conversion, on tracking. You have a lot of, I feel like your scope is more, how can I put it? You have less room overall for suspense and creative ambiguity, and you have to convert. You need to have a solid funnel, and you kind of have to control everything from A to Z. I feel like that's a complexity you have with ADS, which means that sometimes people will come to you for quizzes, but you'll tell them, no, guys, you need to rethink your pricing. And since they don't have the power to do that, it potentially doesn't work out. And there are a lot of things, in my opinion, that you need to influence.
Yeah, and it's expensive. And in your results plan, in the end, it ends up costing a lot. So often you want quick results. But on the other hand, your business works well organically. Organic, I was going to say, from time to time. Sometimes those are more qualified leads because you'll get more curious people on that side. It's really a whole different way of thinking. And actually, we make a lot of landing pages that are really independent from the main website. Some people call them
landing pages. Thank you. SEO guys have a non-index landing page next to the main site. Just bid on my pages. Send me the traffic at least. But every time there's a menu, guys, there are too many elements. It's disruptive, etc. We have a lower conversion rate on your SEO landing pages.
Even if the guy could be, I don't know, you are a user, you are a responsible person, RH at the defense. You get home, you come across a great ad for employer branding, for example. You're convinced. The ad, you got hooked, you clicked, you're on the page. If you start browsing the site, great. The person is looking for information. That's cool. The click, it might have cost €8. Let's imagine the person. We don't want them to leave without leaving their contact information. There are 1,000 reasons why they might leave. They're on the subway, they're heading home, between a kid screaming, someone calling them, oh, look, they got a text, something super important. They got a match on Tinder or whatever else. There are too many good reasons for people to move on when they come. On your page, like you paid €8, you paid too much for the person to leave without leaving their information. That's why we're super aggressive on landing pages. We don't want people to leave without entering their information, because otherwise you paid for nothing. You're just considered. So yes, potentially the person will remember you. But if you've done a great ad, it was in the subway, maybe it will move on to something else. Maybe in the evening, she'll blink her Safari history and maybe that's it for you. And tomorrow she will make the same request again and she will just go to your competitor because you weren't there at the right time. Damn.
A tough blow. Or she will click on you again. You will pay another €8 at that point. In the end, she is not interested and you will have paid €16 for nothing.
That's it. That's all.
Listen, not bad. William, that's serious. Interesting what you're telling me. Before we conclude, I'd like you to give me a little something. 2 or 3 little techniques, some tips and tricks that you have in C that people in my audience who aren't necessarily C specialists might not know about. So your top 3 little tips and tricks that the Google advisor will annoy you about on the phone, will tell you at best, and that you, as an agency boss, have seen other techniques that work well right now in C.
So it's more about what not to do.
Not do. The 3 things not to do.
Well, first of all, when a Google advisor calls you, they will often encourage you to move towards automation. That is to say, if you want to go for PMax, AMax, the advice from Google rarely aims to help you improve your performance. They are going to make you buy traffic and clicks. So they will want to really push you to follow along. The Google automation machine, trusting Google. Trusting Google means starting to buy informational queries when what you want is to buy business queries. Don't follow the advice of Google consultants because in most cases, they're not relevant. Especially because often they're end of study internships after business school. They get 2 days of training, 2 weeks at most, and they have targets to meet. They're incentivized to get you to switch to PMax. That's fine, it pays. Google's dividends, not yours. First point, don't follow the advice from Google's internal teams. It's rare that it's good, and they don't know how to do tracking. Second point, when you're running ads, the setup of your campaigns is extremely important. With just a few clicks, you can eliminate 80% of bad traffic. I'll share them, but I'll group them into a single point because I want to stick to 3 points.
With pleasure.
When you're setting your geographic targeting, there's a little drop-down menu that lets you target France. There's a small tab, advanced options. You have presence and interest and presence. By default, presence and interest is checked. If you check presence, you're no longer targeting people who are in France and interested in France, but only people who are actually in France. It's obvious, but actually Google has an interest in you spending money on people who are interested in France. Canada, Maghreb, neighboring countries, any type of country that might be interested in France. People who are going to come on vacation, who might search for your query. Yes, people in Austria might need a plumber. So second point, don't go overboard with display ads. We've talked about it. And above all, that's it, precise configuration. But for that, you have everything on my YouTube channel. You follow a tutorial, but there are plenty of tutorials out there. It's pretty easy. But don't follow the advice from Google advisors. And the third point is really simple. Just because you're targeting the keyword Google Ads Agency doesn't mean you'll show up for Google Ads Agency. Google is taking more and more liberties. Whether you're using exact match, phrase match, or broad match keywords, it will take more and more liberties. There's a little tab that's not very well known, which is in Insights and Reports at the top left. You click on it and you have a submenu called Search Terms. The keyword is what you're targeting. The search term is what was actually typed in, what you actually appear for. And sometimes it can be completely different. What's important at the end of the day is to work on these search terms. You need to check them every day, or at worst every week. There's a real issue of education here because Google will make you appear for certain search terms, and sometimes those aren't relevant to you. Eliminate those search terms. Sometimes you might have 100 or 200 of them. You check them one by one, the ones that aren't relevant to you, and you remove them. You understand where Google wants to make you appear. By doing this, you'll be able to eliminate, for example, let's say you offer SEO audits. You don't want to appear for keywords from people who type free. You'll be able to eliminate everyone who searches for audits, SEO, free. Because actually, these people could become your clients tomorrow, but the fact that they're searching for free already says a lot, maybe, about their search intent. Eliminating search terms is really important. Actually, well, sometimes your agency doesn't even know about this tab actually, because it's an intern managing your ads. So there you go. Yeah, that's 3. So those are basic tips. And actually, it's often the simplest things that get the best results. And after that, we're getting into the finer details. You'll already be giving yourself a
return. You're already above 70% of the people running Google Ads with these three types. That's great. Thank you very much, William. Where can we find you? On LinkedIn, I imagine that's the easiest for you, or on the Overtix website.
So on LinkedIn, you can find us. There are several ways. Our website, Convertix. On LinkedIn, William Palandre or Alexis Goller, my associate. And for Optiflex, normally, if you search among the AIs for a Google ADS agency or a Meta ADS agency in Lion, you should find us in the first position.
That's nice. That's really the attempt. All right, this one, I'll leave it here to show that we're good, and we'll take the risk that you might go to someone else. I hope
that this will age well when
it does. I hope so too.
If you want to talk with someone from the team, you can go to convertix.fa. There's a big call to action for you to book an appointment with Alexis or me. We'd be very happy to take a look at your ads. The idea is to be performance-oriented. Performance. And we're not keyword buyers, we're client buyers.
So cool. Well, listen, thank you. Thanks a lot for today's insights. It was a pleasure having you. And hey, see you soon. I hope you all enjoy it. Let's keep acquiring with Google. It's a pleasure. That's
fine by me. All right, see you very
soon. Bye-bye.
Ciao.